What's happening? Now, if you're like me, sometimes you get that nostalgic itch and you just gotta scratch it, and I typically find myself reminiscing about the early days of Toonami on Cartoon Network. Ah yes, good old Toonami. So what do? Well, I hop on the old YouTube, clickety-clack away at the keyboard, and relive that experience through videos. For the uninitiated, Toonami is Cartoon Network's television programming block dedicated to anime. And during the late 90s and early 2000s, it would air every weekday between 4 and 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States. In fact, Toonami still exists today, although it's now part of Adult Swim's programming block every Saturday night. Anyway, for many people growing up 20 years ago, Toonami was more than just after-school entertainment. It was our gateway to anime, thanks to shows like Dragon Ball Z, Outlaw Star, and Gundam Wing, just to name a few. But one of my favorite Toonami shows was the original Mobile Suit Gundam, and though not as flashy as Gundam Wing, Cartoon Network went out of their way to promote the aging series, which at the time of its North American broadcast in July 2001, was already a 22-year-old show in Japan. They even went as far as to create a new opening and ending credit sequence in an attempt to make it more appealing. Of course, these kinds of edits are considered anime blasphemy nowadays, but it's fun to go back and watch them every now and then. I mean, this is the only time in history they showed these intros, and you can't even find them on the current DVD or re-releases on the internet. You can, however, find them on the original DVDs and VHS tapes that came out in 2001. But hey, it's fun to go back and watch them every now and then. And it was during one of my rewatches that I came across this interesting comment from user TheJE32. This intro takes me back. Toonami managed to bring the show and created this intro as to be an official use of the show before 9/11 happened. #Toonami. Which is then followed by another user, Alex Kramer, responding, "The show wasn't cancelled because of 9/11. That makes no sense." And after reading those comments, I too was questioning what the heck 9/11 had to do with Gundam, and if I had stumbled upon some crazy internet conspiracy theory, but then it hit me. I actually remember watching Toonami on 9/11, but I don't remember watching Gundam at all. Now, before we go any further, I just want to clarify that this video is not going to focus on the 9/11 attacks, but instead focus on reactionary censorship that in part led to the TV cancellation of Gundam. That being said, today marks the 20th anniversary of the attacks. The world will never forget what happened on that tragic day and the lasting impact it's had on our day-to-day lives ever since. Now let's continue. Like so many others in their late 20s and early 30s, Toonami was a huge part of my childhood. Every day after school I would rush home to finish any homework I had so I could enjoy the full 2-hour broadcast and watch Dragon Ball Z and Gundam and then talk about it with my friends the next day at school. The cycle would repeat itself, you get the idea. It's how I discovered shows like Gundam Wing and thus the rest of the Gundam franchise. This eventually led me to a website called MAHQ or Mecha HQ, which cataloged all sorts of information on Gundam and other series, and it was through this website I eventually read about the original Mobile Suit Gundam. Gundam Wing was cool and all, but once I read about the 1-year war and the rivalry between Char and Amuro, man, I was hooked. Then out of nowhere, I started seeing commercials for the original series on Cartoon Network, on Toonami.
You're mine. Fully restore Mobile Suit Gundam. Next. Suit up for the first time. Only Toonami.
Seriously though, that commercial gave me so much hype when I was 10 years old. I tried telling some of my friends about it, and they seemed confused that it wasn't a sequel to Gundam Wing, and a couple friends commented that the animation quality looked kinda old, and of course I couldn't care less about the animation quality. I was just excited to watch the series that is still receiving sequels to this day with shows like Gundam Unicorn and Hathaway's Flash. The show aired later in July, and I was hooked. However, a couple of late summer vacations kept me from watching every episode, but hey, I figured Toonami would air some reruns later that year, so no big deal. Then school started, and out of nowhere my parents started scheduling dinner much earlier than usual, which meant that I was missing Gundam most days. And then one day in September, I was in school, and I remember everyone talking about some plane that hit a building or something, and yeah, I really didn't understand what was happening at the time. But I remember when I got home, my parents were watching the news, and they used to watch the news every night, but the news had been on since I came home. So that was different. I just remember my mom turning to me and saying, "Hey, if you want to go watch cartoons, watch as much as you want." And yeah, I jumped on that opportunity like any mindless 10-year-old would. But man, that was... yeah. When your mom's telling you to go watch cartoons and she's usually saying they're doing nothing but rotting your brain and wasting time, you know something's up. But yeah, I don't really remember that much of the broadcast that day because of all the news highlights playing in the background, and all I remember is watching a couple episodes of Dragon Ball Z, and yeah, I didn't watch any Gundam, not because I forgot about it, but because they didn't show it that day. So back to the main topic of this video, what happened to Mobile Suit Gundam? Was it really cancelled because of 9/11? Yeah, it actually was. I did some research, and this is what I found. According to an old Gundam fan website that posted news and related information on the series, Gundam was, quote, pulled from air from Cartoon Network's Toonami block for the foreseeable future as the result of the tragedy that occurred on September the 11th. AOL Time Warner, the media conglomerate that owned Cartoon Network, decided that due to the nature of the show and the atrocities of war that it depicts, now is not the right time to be airing the program. Now, this was released apparently from a leaked internal memo at AOL Time Warner, and if what's in this statement is true, that's a pretty big reveal right there. They actually pulled the show because of the content. So what they did was on September the 11th, they skipped over an episode of Gundam, episode 37, I believe. And what's even more interesting is that on September 12th, they actually played the next episode. They just skipped over episode 37. So they played the next episode, and then after that, the show was gone. It was on hiatus, and later they officially canceled it. So that makes me wonder, well, if they were going to get rid of the show and they stopped showing it on 9/11, why show that next episode on September 12th? And that got me thinking, well, maybe something happens in episode 37 that is just, you know, too on the nose, so to speak, in regards to the attacks. I went back and watched it, and there's really nothing in there that is similar to a terror attack. The same website would go on to publish another update, supposedly from another internal memo at AOL Time Warner, and it seems like the producers were actually worried about the animation quality just a little bit. But here's what they say here, quote, its removal was not a result of ratings, as it still receives an acceptable share. It was not expected to be fully embraced immediately. It was felt that the animation quality would distract many viewers. The hope was that as more recent shows of the Zeon era were aired, interest would increase. And that's actually kind of what happened. They showed the original Gundam, and then later on, during the Adult Swim segments, I think a year later, they showed Gundam 0080 War in the Pocket and Gundam 0083 Stardust Memory, both of which are some of my favorite Gundam series. They're short little original video animations with just, maybe about 20 episodes total between the two of them. And yeah, that they're pretty horrific in terms of their content and depictions of war. So it's probably good they didn't show those in 2001. But yeah. But unfortunately for Mobile Suit Gundam, it would not finish its original broadcast following the attacks. Instead, they would show the rest of the episodes during a Toonami special called New Year's Evil later that year around, the end of the year, December 31st. So the show did finish its broadcast technically, but there was a big chunk of time between those last several episodes. So Gundam had a rocky start on Western television. I mean, it took off with Gundam Wing, it stagnated a little bit, but more importantly, it helped build the foundations of a very strong Western fan base for Gundam, including myself. I mean, you can go into Target nowadays and buy Gunpla. I haven't seen Gunpla in Target since, 2001, 2002. So, yeah, it kind of blows my mind. And I'm glad that 20 years later that we're still able to enjoy all this content, and 2001 was a different time. And again, I hope we never forget what happened that day and the lessons that we can learn from it. But yeah, that was a walk down memory lane, to say the least. And Thanks for sticking with me through this video. I know it's a bit longer than some of the stuff I've made in the past. So, as always, thank you for watching. It means a lot. Thank you for your comments. I'm really open to discussion. And yeah, take it easy. And of course, I'll catch you next time.